All right, we are on chapter 7, and there's only 9 chapters. Oh, Isaac's joining us. Let's wait one more second. Hello, Isaac. We're starting on chapter 7. When Luella McCluskey's mother went to work part-time at the telephone company, she let Luella babysit her little brother Howard, again during spring vacation. Just don't let the Herdmans get him this time, she said. He's got hair now, so they can't draw over his head, but I don't know what else they might do. Howard had hair all right, but it was no big improvement because it started way above his ears and grew straight up like grass. If it was up to me, Luella said, I'd shave his head and let him start all over. Luella turned... Just mention that to Leroy, I said. Luella turned pale. My mother would kill me, and I'd never get to watch television or go to the movies for the rest of my life. Luella kept Howard out of sight for the whole time. But when school started again, the regular babysitter quit, so Mrs. McCluskey got special permission for Luella to bring Howard to school. Just for a few days, she said, just till I find someone else. Could you imagine if you had to bring your little sibling to school with you and babysit them? How would you get any learning done? That'd be silly. Now what'll I do, Luella said. I can't learn compound fraction and watch out for Howard all the time, and he'll be right there in the same room with Imogene Herdman. She was really worried, and I couldn't blame her.
Our 2nd and 6th graders can now re-enter the building.
So I wasn't too surprised when she showed up with Howard on a leash. All right, Howard's on a leash. Dun dun. Miss Kemp was pretty surprised, though. Is that necessary, Luella? She asked. After all, your little brother is our guest here in 6th grade. Is that how we want to treat a guest in class? Some kids said no, but lots of kids said yes because they figured Howard was going to be a pain in the neck. But Miss Kemp spent 10 minutes talking about manners and hospitality, but I guess she figured Howard might be in a pain in the neck too because she didn't make Luella untie him. She did make her get a longer leash, though, because Howard got knocked on his bottom every time he tried to go somewhere. He better learn not to do that, Imogene Herdman said. Claude had to learn not to do that. Miss Kemp looked at her. Not to do what? Not to go past the end of the leash. Why was Claude on a leash? Because we didn't have a dog, Imogene said. Miss Kemp frowned and sort of shook her head. The way you do when you've got water in your ears and something sounds strange and far away. But she didn't ask to hear any more, and you couldn't blame her. Luella poked me. If they wanted a dog, she said, they could just go to the animal rescue. That's where we got our dog. That might be okay for Luella, but I didn't think the animal rescue people would give the Herdmans a rescued goldfish, let alone a whole dog, and the Herdmans probably knew it. Maybe they even went there and said, we want a dog, and the animal rescue said, not on your life. So then I guess they just looked around and said, okay, Claude, you be the dog. And then Claude was the dog till he got tired of it, or they got tired of it. You had to wonder what he did when he was the dog. Bite people? Maybe. Except they had Gladys to do that. Boomer Malone thought he might bark and guard the house. From what, I asked? Boomer shrugged. I don't know. Robbers? Boomer. Who are the main robbers around here? Oh, yeah, he nodded. They are. Kids who didn't have a dog thought he might want to come when somebody called them, or sit up and beg or roll over or fetch papers. Kids who did have dogs said their dogs barked to get in and barked to get out and chased cars and swiped food off the table and tore up the neighbor's trash, and all those things sounded more like Claude. You could see, though, how he would get tired of it. He probably got tired of being on a leash, Alice said. Not like some people I know. She meant Howard. Alice had already told Luella what she thought about Howard. I tried to teach your little brother to read, she said, so he'll be ready for kindergarten like I was, but I don't think he'll ever be let in kindergarten. He's pretty dumb. He's too little to be dumb, Luella grumbled. If you want to teach him something, you could teach him how to go to the bathroom. Well, I knew that wouldn't happen because Alice won't even say the word bathroom. It's a good thing you can raise your hand to be excused, because if Alice had to say where she was going, she would never go, and I don't know what would happen to her. Dumb or not, Howard was okay for such a little kid stuck in 6th grade. He had lots of papers and crayons and little boxes of cereal to eat, and different people brought him different things to play with. Alice showed up with great big pieces of cardboard that said ABC, but Howard didn't like those much. He scribbled all over them, which, Alice said, just proved how dumb he was, and he didn't even recognize the alphabet. He'll never get into kindergarten, she said again. To hear Alice, you would think getting into kindergarten was better than getting into heaven, and a whole lot harder. They'll never let him in with that, she said the first time she saw Howard's blanket. And for once, you had to think she might be right. Howard's blanket was gross. Luella said it used to be blue and used to have bunnies on it, but now it looked like my father's car washing rag. He has to have it, Luella said. If he didn't have his blanket, Miss Kemp would probably have to throw him out. If he doesn't have his blanket, he cries and yells and jumps up and down. And if he still doesn't have his blanket, he holds his breath till he turns purple. Right away, Boomer Malone scooped up the blanket and sat on it, which would have caused a big argument, except everyone wanted to see Howard turn purple. It was recess, and there was already a bunch of kids gathered around Howard at one of the playgrounds, so naturally more kids came to see what was going on. Howard quit howling and began to hold his breath. Half of Woodrow Wilson School was there trying to see over and around people. What's he doing? I heard someone say. Is he purple yet? He wasn't. I didn't think he would live to be purple. His eyes were popping out and his little head veins standing out. Luella, I said, do something. He's going to explode. No, he won't, she said. He never does. You can't explode from holding your breath. It's a scientific fact. He won't even pass out. You'll see. I didn't want to see. What if Luella was wrong? But it didn't matter anyways, because all of a sudden, Imogene Herdman charged up, shoving kids out of the way left and right, and began to pound on Luella. You said he would turn purple, she said. Look at him. He's not purple. I can't stand around here all day waiting for him to turn purple. Here, kid. She threw Howard his blanket, and Howard let out a big, loud, slobbery cry. Then he went on sobbing and hiccuping and hugging his blanket while Imogene stalked off, and the whole big crowd of kids grumbled at Luella as if it was her fault. I should just take his blanket away right now, Luella said, and let everybody look at him, and that would be that. But as far as I know, he never had to hold his breath 2 times so close together, and I don't know what that would do to him. I thought it'd probably kill him, so I was glad she didn't do it. But I knew plenty of kids would if they got the chance. My mother said it would be better not be me or Charlie if we knew what was good for us. That poor child has been scribbled on and scrubbed with scoring powder. He has been bald and shiny-headed, and now his hair looks as if someone planted it. Isn't that enough for one little boy? Either Imogene agreed with my mother, or else she had plans to exhibit Howard at some later date. See the amazing purple baby, 25 cents. And I didn't want him used up. From then on, I kept one eye on Howard and the other on his blanket, and when Wesley Potter tried to snatch Howard's blanket, he never knew what hit him. Imogene smacked Wesley flat and then stood him up and held him by his ears and said, you leave that blanket alone. You leave that kid alone, or I'll wrap your whole head in chewing gum so tight that they'll have to peel it off along with your hair and your eyebrows and your lip skin and everything. That took care of Wesley and everybody else who heard it. But it made Luella nervous. Why is she being so nice to Howard? Luella said, why did she get his blanket back? That's twice she's gotten Howard's blanket back. Why? I didn't know why, but I knew she wouldn't have to do it again because nobody wants to go through light wrapped in gum or skinned bald. And that would be your choice. Maybe she likes him, I said. Why would she like him, Luella said. I don't even like him, and he's my own brother. But that's normal, I said. I'm not crazy about Charlie either. If Howard was somebody else's brother, you'd like him. I like him. There's nothing not to like unless he is your brother, and you have to bring him to school and watch out for him and keep him on a leash and all. Keep him on a leash, Luella repeated. Remember what Imogene said? They kept Claude on a leash because they didn't have a dog. So they still don't have a dog. And here's Howard already on a leash. Oh, Luella squealed. Imogene is going to make him be their dog, and my mother will kill me. Come on, Luella, I said. You can't make a person be a dog. They can pretend Howard is their dog, but just look at Howard, Luella said. He'll pretend anything Imogene wants him to. This was true. Howard was hugging his blanket and feeling his favorite corners, which were even rattier than the rest of the blanket, and looking at Imogene the way you look up at the tooth fairy handing you out $10 a tooth. She'll feed him dog biscuits and teach him to bite, Luella moaned. Maybe he'll bite Gladys, I said, and there's nothing wrong with dog biscuits. Everybody eats dog biscuits at least once to see what they taste like. I personally didn't care for them, but when Charlie was little, he was crazy about this one brand called Puppy Pleasers. I asked him how they tasted, and he knew exactly. If you take a chocolate bar to the beach, he said, and put it in the sand and let it melt, and pick up the melted chocolate bar with the sand and stick it in the freezer, and then it's frozen, but bust it into little pieces. That's how puppy pleasers taste. At the time, I thought Charlie would either die of grit or slowly turn to sand from the feet up, and I didn't know what we would do with him. Stand him up in the backyard and plant flowers around him? I didn't know what the Herdmans would do with their dog Howard either. Whenever Charlie and I asked for a dog, my mother always said, "What are you going to do with him?" And we never knew what to say. We thought the dog would do it all, and we would just hang around and watch. Mother said that's exactly what she thought we thought. When you find a dog that's smart enough to take care of itself and let itself in and out of the house and answer the phone, let me know, she said. Obviously, there's not going to be a dog that's going to be answering the phone for himself. Although that'd be cool. Dogs are a lot of work. I have a dog, and I have to take care of her all the time. Luella said we would have to watch Imogene, or else she'll try to run off with Howard and take him home and name him the dog name like Rover or Spot. Luckily, she never got the chance. Mrs. McCluskey got her wires crossed at the telephone company and shut down the whole system for half an hour. She never knew a thing like that could happen, she said, and it made her more nervous that she just quit her job right on the spot. And after that, Luella didn't have to bring Howard to school anymore. This was a big relief for Luella, and you could tell it made Miss Kemp happy too. But she gave a little speech anyways about how we would miss Howard and how he would be a big part of the 6th grade experience, and we would always remember him. Sounds like he died, Imogene muttered. She was mad, I thought, because of wasting all her good deeds, getting Howard's blanket back and making kids leave him alone, and not getting anything for it, like a substitute dog, as if that was what she wanted. There is one thing, Miss Kemp went on. It seems Howard went off without his blanket. Has anyone seen Howard's blanket? No one had. Or else no one would admit they had. Not with Imogene sitting there blowing this huge bubble of gum in and out, ready to park it on anybody who looked guilty. It's too bad you can't study bubblegum and get graded for it, because Imogene would get straight A's. Her bubbles were so big, so thin, you could see her whole face through the bubble. Like looking at somebody through their own skin. What if we can't find it? I asked Luella. We better find it, she said, or else Howard will go crazy, because all he does is sob and cry and hold his breath and hiccup. He also turned purple, she said, and he had almost passed out. So you had to figure out that if somebody didn't turn up with Howard's blanket soon, he would never make it to next week, let alone kindergarten. We looked for the blanket off and on the rest of the day, though Alice said it would be better if we didn't find it. It's old and horrible and full of germs, she said. And she told Luella, "You should be glad it's lost. Howard will thank you someday." This is what your mother says when she makes you wear ugly shoes. She says, "This will give your toes room to grow, and you'll thank me someday." Hearing Alice say things like this makes you want to squirt her with canned cheese. Even Miss Kemp does. I think because she said Alice. I can assure you that by the time Howard gets to someday, he won't even remember this blanket. Somebody muttered, "Don't be too sure." Imogene. Da-da-da. All right. The good news was the next day, Howard had lived through the night without going crazy or purple. And even better, when Imogene showed up with his blanket, she said she found it at the bus stop under a bush. Nobody believed this. The Herdman stole everything that wasn't nailed down just out of habit. Why not Howard's blanket? But so what, Luella said, as long as Imogene brought it back. The next day, the art teacher, Miss Harrison, stopped Luella in the hall and gave her a bunch of stubby crayons for Howard. "I just heard about your little brother's blanket," she said. "Luella, you aren't going to find it because I threw it away. The last time we had art, I used it to wipe pastels off the chalkboard and just threw it away. I'm really sorry. I didn't know it was Howard's blanket. It looks like my car washing rag." Luella shook her head. "We found Howard's blanket." Miss Harris shook her head. "You're just saying that to make me feel better." "No, as soon as I heard it was missing, I knew what I'd done and where it was, gone in the trash." "She's wrong," Luella said. "Maybe you're wrong," I said. Luella thought for a minute. "Well, Howard wouldn't be wrong if he thinks it's his blanket. You can't get it away from him." We did get it away for him, but we had to wait till he was asleep. Then we had to unfasten his fingers and quickly give him this old worn-out bathrobe of Luella's. "See," said Luella, "it's the same blanket." It certainly looked like the same blanket, old, faded, sort of dirty gray, with one corner that was especially old and faded and dirty gray. There was something else, too. A capital H scribbled and wobbly, almost faded. It was his initial, I said. H for Howard. Llewell said. There's no initial on Howard's blanket. I started to show her H, and then I saw the other initial. It was I. IH. There's only one IH in the whole Woodrow Wilson School. Imogene Herdman. Luello, I said. Imogene didn't find this blanket underneath the bush or anywhere else. This was her own blanket. Luello refused to believe this, and he couldn't blame her. It was hard enough just to imagine that Imogene was ever a baby, let alone a baby with her own blanket to drag around and hang on to. Besides, Luella said, if it was her, she wouldn't give it away. The Herdmans never gave anything away in their whole life. But what about the initials, I said. They aren't really initials, Luella said. I think it's just what's left of the bunny print. I guess Luella believed this, but I knew better. They were Imogene's initials, all right. And this was Imogene's blanket. Maybe somebody took it away from her when she was a baby, and maybe she yelled and held her breath and turned purple. So she would know exactly how Howard felt, and she would be sympathetic. I could hardly wait to write this down on the compliments for classmates page in my notebook. But it looked too weird. Imogene Herdman, sympathetic. Nobody would believe this. And I would have to explain it, and Imogene would probably wrap my head in chewing gum if I told anyone that she once had a blanket with a favorite corner chewed on and everything. That was the end of chapter 7. We are going to read chapter 8 in 1 second after I respond to an email. So everyone, take 5 seconds. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, sorry, peeps. Perks of being the online teacher. Always got to be doing stuff. Okay. All right. We are heading on to chapter 8. We're going to finish chapter 8 today. And then tomorrow we are going to finish the book. Chapter 8. 2 or 3 times a year, all the Herdmans would be absent at the same time, and it was like a vacation. You knew you wouldn't get killed at recess. You wouldn't have to hand over your lunch. You wouldn't have to hide your money if you had any. We even had easy lessons when they were absent. Boomer Malone said the teachers did this on purpose to give us all time to heal and get our strength back. But my mother said it was probably the teachers who had to get their strength back. Nobody knew why they were absent. Nobody cared. They didn't have to bring a note from home either, like everybody else, to say what was the matter. Why bother, the school nurse told my mother. They would write it themselves. No one could read it, and it would be a lie. Besides, if they ever did have something contagious, they wouldn't stay home. They'd come here and breathe on everybody. You never knew when they would be absent either, but nobody thought this made any difference till they were all absent on a fire drill day, and the school won the fire department's speed and safety wars. I can't believe this improvement, the fire chief said. Last time it took 34 minutes to vacate the building. What happened? You know what happened, Miss Crabtree said. We lost half the kindergarten. Ollie Herdman led them out the basement door and took them all downtown. I mean, what happened this time? Nothing happened this time, Mr. Crabtree said, because Ollie isn't there. Neither is Ralph or Imogene or Leroy or Claude or Gladys. Where are they? They're absent, Mr. Crabtree said. The chief sighed. I thought maybe they moved away. Oh, well. He sighed again and said if that's the case, he'd better get back to the firehouse and be ready for anything. Everyone was pretty excited about the Speed and Safety Award because we had never won anything before and probably never would again till the last Herdman was gone from Woodrow Wilson School. So far, though, we could only be excited about the honor of it because we wouldn't get the actual award till Fire Prevention Day. There was a Fire Prevention Day every year, but all we ever got was Smokey the Bear stickers, so this was a big step up. There would be a special assembly with the fire chief and the mayor there, and the newspaper would send someone to take pictures and interview kids on fire prevention. Of course, fire prevention was the last thing the Herdmans knew anything about, except to be against it, I guess. So you had to hope the reporter wouldn't pick one of them to interview. You had to hope they wouldn't show up for this big event wearing beer advertisement t-shirts. You had to hope they wouldn't show up. Maybe they wouldn't, Charlie said. Maybe they don't even know we won the award. It's true. The Herdmans didn't know much if you count things like who's invented the telephone, but they always knew what was going on around them, which in the case was plenty. There were signs and posters about fires and firemen everywhere. All the blackboards said Woodrow Wilson Elementary School speed and safety winners. Kids were making bookmarks and placemats and writing poems and story about our big accomplishment. We didn't even have hot dogs and hamburgers for lunch. We had fire dogs and smoky burgers. How could the Herdmans miss this all? They didn't. Somebody in second grade brought in a great big stuffed bear, and they stood it in the hall with a sign around its neck. Smokey says, "Congratulations to the Woodrow Wilson School." And the very next day, there was a bear with the paws full of matches, cigarette lighters, firecrackers in his mouth, and a half-smoked cigar sticking out of its mouth. Smokey the firebug bear. "Oh, this is so disgusting," Alice said. "What if someone reports it to the fire department? We might not even get the award. As usual, they're going to mess everything up and ruin the whole assembly, hitting people and tripping people and folding little kids up in their seats." I guess Mr. Crabtree came into the back door that day and didn't know what had happened to the bear because the first announcement was all about the outstanding fire prevention display by the second grade. "I want every student to stop by the second grade room and see our very own Smokey the Bear," he said. "And let's be sure to thank those second graders for this." Then there were some whispers and a thump sound, and somebody put the hand over the microphone, but you could still hear voices and a few words. "Matches. Horrible wet cigars. Get rid of that bear." Then the secretary, Mrs. Parker, got on and shuffled some papers and cleared her throat and said that Mr. Crabtree had been called away suddenly and she would finish the announcements. Picture money was due by Friday, and Fred Flintstone lunchbox had been left on bus 4. There would be a meeting on fire safety team in the lunchroom after school. Right away, Alice wrote this down on a piece of paper as if it was so important engagements that she had to write them all down. Imogene poked me. "What's the fire safety team?" "For the assembly," I said. "It's some kids who are doing a demonstration on what to do in case of a fire." Imogene shrugged. "Throw water on it and get out of the way?" Then she squinched her eyes. "What kids? Who's on the team?" I was going to say, "I don't know," or "Who cares?" Something to lose that Imogene wouldn't want to waste her time. But as usual, Alice had to blow her own horn. "I am," she said. "There's 10 of us, plus 2 alternates in case somebody gets sick at the last minute." It's not unusual for people to get sick at the last minute if they're mixed up with the Herdman, so that got Imogene's attention. But it wasn't enough to hold her attention till Alice said, "We're going to have t-shirts that say Fire Safety Team, Woodrow Wilson School, and we'll all look alike in the picture." I didn't even bother to say, "Shut up, Alice." It was too late. You could tell that Imogene was already seeing herself in the fire safety t-shirt and in the picture, and there was only one thing that you didn't know for sure: who besides the 2 alternates was going to get sick at the last minute. Naturally, Imogene wasn't the only Herdman who showed up in the lunchroom after school. They were all there slouching around, ready for action, draping over the table, scraping gum from underneath the benches, chewing it, and this was old gum, shiny with germs and hard enough to tear your teeth out. There was at least one kid from every grade on the fire safety team, and they all had one eye on the Herdman, so Mr. Crabtree couldn't just ignore them, which is probably what he wanted to do. "School's over, Ralph," Mr. Crabtree said. "Imogene, Ollie, unless you people have some reason to be here, it's time to go home." "We're just having a meeting." "We came to sign up," Ralph said. "Sign up for what?" "This is the fire safety team." "Right," Leroy said. "That. We want to sign up for that." "It was on the announcements," Gladys put in, "about the meeting after school." Mr. Crabtree opened his mouth, then shut it again because there wasn't anything he could do about this. He had made it a major rule that anybody at the Woodrow Wilson School could sign up for anything they wanted to, no exceptions. He had made another rule that everybody had to sign up for something whether they wanted to or not. So you had kids who signed up for 2 or 3 things, and had kids who signed up for everything, and had kids who wouldn't sign up at all till their teacher or their mother or Mr. Crabtree made them do something. What you didn't have was Herdman signing up for anything. Till now. My mother said it was a good idea for the Herdman's to be on the fire safety team. Who needs to know more about fire safety than those kids, she said. Some people said at least this way you could keep an eye on them during the assembly. My father said it was like inviting a lot of bank robbers to a demonstration to rob a bank. 3 kids quit the fire safety team right away before anything could happen to them, but their mother said they ought to get the t-shirt anyways in view of the circumstances. Mr. Crabtree knew what circumstances they were talking about, Herdman, so he didn't even mention that. He just said he didn't have anything to do with the t-shirts. That's up to the PTA, he said. The PTA is providing the t-shirts for the fire safety team in honor of the special occasion. The president of the PTA said they weren't providing t-shirts who quit the fire safety team. Mrs. Windlekin said they better not be providing t-shirts for the Herdmans who had muscled their way onto the fire safety team. And anybody could talk about t-shirts, but I agreed with Charlie, who said he wouldn't be on the fire safety team if you paid him, not for 50 t-shirts. I watched them practice, he said, and when Mr. Crabtree yells drop and roll, all the Herdmans drop on somebody like in a football. They dropped on Albert Purfry, nearly smashed him flat, which wasn't all bad because, as I said, Albert is a really fat kid, but Albert quit the fire safety team anyways. I've gotten enough trouble just being fat, he said. I don't want to be flat and dead both. At last minute, 2 kids got sick, or they said they did, and right away both the alternates quit, which didn't surprise anybody. You don't want to quit, Mr. Crabtree told him. This is a big opportunity. He meant a big opportunity to take part in Fire Prevention Day and get a t-shirt and their picture taken, but it was also a big opportunity to get pounded 2 feet into the ground by the Herdmans. I can only be an alternate, Roberta Scout said. I can't actually be in it or anything. Roberta, that's what an alternate is, Mr. Crabtree said. It's your responsibility to be in it and everything. You too, Lonnie. Lonnie Hutchinson was the other alternate, and he said that he had to quit because of his asthma. Nice try, Lonnie, Mr. Crabtree said, but you don't have asthma. I know who all has asthma. I know who has pink eye, poison ivy, athlete's foot, also coughs and colds and nervous stomachs. Mr. Crabtree didn't mention any other diseases, and when Lonnie's mother called the school to say Lonnie was sick with a rash, Mr. Crabtree didn't believe it. Too convenient, he said. It's probably finger paint or magic marker or something like that. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I saw Leroy Herdman walking around with red spots all over his face looking for trouble. I just told him, Leroy, go wash your face. And the next time I saw him, the spots were gone. But it wasn't finger paint on Lottie. It was chickenpox. And before you could say Speed and Safety Award, there wasn't anybody left to go in it. Mr. Crabtree wanted to postpone Fire Prevention Day, but the fire chief said he couldn't do that. It's Fire Prevention Day all over town. He said all over the state. You can't just have your own Fire Prevention Day whenever you want to. Tell you what, though, if you'll get together a small group of whatever kids you've got left, your fire safety team would be good. And bring them down to the firehouse, and we'll have the award presentation right there. We'll make it a big event. It turned out to be a bigger event than anybody expected because the pizza parlor ovens caught fire half an hour before the presentation. They put the fire out right away, but Mr. Santero made all his customers leave because of the smoke, and most of them just followed the fire engines back to the firehouse and stayed for the presentation. Some people thought the fire was part of the presentation, especially when Mr. Santero showed up with all his leftover pizzas and handed it out for free. Everybody said it was a great way to advertise fire prevention, and they congratulated the mayor and the fire chief for thinking it up, and the fire chief congratulated Mr. Santero for donating the pizzas. The newspaper reporter got it all wrong, too. Mock fire stage to highlight the Fire Prevention Day, he wrote. Restaurant owner contributes pizza for large crowd attending ceremony. School students honored for safety techniques. And the honor students were all there. The honored students were what was left of the fire safety team. Ralph, Imogene, Leroy, Claude, Audie, Ollie, and Gladys, and there was a picture of them standing in front of the fire truck looking like a police lineup. You could imagine the officer saying, now which one of you did it? The victim saying, I can't be sure. They all look alike. They do look alike, except for being different sizes. Plus, of course, they had on the famous matching t-shirts. If I didn't know better, my mother said, I would think this was the Herdmans being honored instead of the school. This turned out to be the general opinion, and so many people called the newspaper to complain that they printed another story, Woodrow Wilson School, despite chickenpox epidemic, Wind Speed and Safety Award, which my father said was better than nothing, but not much. What does chickenpox have to do with it? He wanted to know. But my mother said he was just tired of watching Charlie and me scratch. Miss Wendelkane made Alice sit in the bathtub full of baking soda water so she wouldn't scratch, and made her wear these white cotton gloves so she wouldn't scratch. And when Alice came back to school, besides having puckery, seersuckered skin, she was still wearing the gloves. I don't think that's necessary, Alice, Miss Kemp said. I have to wear them while I'm thinking, Alice told her, so I won't forget and scratch. If you scratch chickenpox, they'll get infected and leave scars. Not on Leroy, Imogene said. Not on Ollie, not on... Wait a minute, Miss Kemp said. Leroy, Ollie, I wasn't aware any of your family was absent during our epidemic. Oh, we weren't absent, Imogene said. Miss Kemp said, but you had the chickenpox? You mean, did I have the chickenpox, Imogene said? This was all talking long distance to my grandmother without her hearing aid, and just like my grandmother, Miss Kemp didn't try to pin it down. If you have chickenpox, you can't come back without a note from the doctor, she said. Imogene said, oh, okay, and got up and left. Okay, so she literally was like, oh, I didn't know that, and just left school in the middle of the day. Well, obviously, we can't be just leaving school in the middle of the day. Goodness, chickenpox are super contagious. People don't really get chickenpox anymore because you guys have probably been vaccinated for it, but they are very, very contagious. I had the chickenpox when I was a little kid, and they can leave scars. I have 2 scars from chickenpox. So no one ever knew for sure whether they did actually have chickenpox or how many of them had chickenpox or exactly when they had chickenpox, and no one will ever know for sure whether they came to school and breathed on everybody to ruin the big award assembly or whether they were all sick and stayed home on the fire drill day so they won the award in the first place. Yes, Evan?
Why are they called chickenpox?
I have no idea. Good question. All right, that was the end of Chapter 8, my lovely, lovely friends.